Welcome everyone to Mail Fuzz TV. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Star Trek The Next Generation Season 6, Episode 17. It is called Birthright Part 2. So, full spoilers for the episode as always. We had a subplot last episode setting up this episode. In fact, I would sort of describe this less of a two-parter and more of they had this episode idea for Worf and just realised that they couldn't get away with setting it up in one intro scene. So they had to stretch it out to a B plot, and then it kind of became a two-parter. So
pretty much, yeah. Because we were theorizing last time, this will probably be the A plot. We'll probably spend most of this. You know, maybe we'll continue with some of that data stuff. Maybe there'll be something else. And it's just like, no, it's just all this.
Yeah, no, we cut to the Enterprise like once, not including the ending when he gets back to the ship, for Picard and Co go, hey, Worf's missing, we need to go find him. Let's look for him. Like that's
it.
That's it. That is the whole thing you get on the ship before Worf returns to it at the end. It's all Worf. It's all in this compound, on this Romulan outpost or whatever. So, some really interesting ideas here. Which is that these Klingons were captured at Kittamir, and they basically chose to secretly stay here along with these Romulans. Which is its own sort of fascinating side to this, is that the Romulan commander here kind of gave up his career in the military, and the Romulan military, to basically the Romulan government said, okay, they can stay there in secret, but you have to, only if you stay there and be their like captor basically forever. So he kind of chose that, right?
He's a pretty reasonable dude.
Yeah, and we find it later, of course, that he marries one of the Klingons, and they've got a child together. So we get into all that stuff, but from the Klingon side of things, they've basically chosen to stay here and let the world think they're dead, because it'll bring dishonor to their families, which is something that's been set up with Worf and what he's been talking about.
Yeah.
And that's basically it. Now, Worf's father's not one of them. He did actually die on Kittamir, so that doesn't alter his backstory particularly. But what does come out of this is that it's kind of this look at the effect of, because obviously you've got this group of Klingons who chose to stay there, and kind of they've already lost their honor as far as they see it, so they'll stay here so as not to bring shame to their families. But then you've got the second generation of their children who were born here and have grown up, including the sort of the lady Klingon that Worf was looking at last episode, who becomes kind of a prominent figure in this one.
Her name was Bael.
Sounds about right. Yeah. Maybe
something along those lines.
Bael. No, there's a Bael as well. There's a Garal as well. So that's the older one. Yeah. So this idea that these younger Klingons have never been raised with proper Klingon ideals, because these Klingons just chose to stay here, intentionally have not done that, so they don't want to leave, and so they don't want to go and join the rest of the universe. And I think for Worf as a character, what's interesting about this is that he's always felt like this outsider who's had to try twice as hard to prove how Klingon he is. It's really interesting to put him in this position where all of a sudden he's the one who knows the Klingon traditions, and he's the one saying, you all don't have your heritage, I'm going to teach you, I'm going to be an influence on you.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting with Worf in particular, because like I say, that's such a important part of his backstory, is this cultural identity that he really has to work hard for to prove that he is Klingon. And now he gets to be the elder, teaching all the young kids, hey, this is what all this stuff is, this is why you should care.
Yeah, I think what's especially fascinating about it is that not only is it a slightly unique perspective, it's not just that he gets to be the elder, it's that he gets to be, it's almost like fulfilling in a sense that he gets to pass this on now. It's like it's just as much his as any other Klingons at this point, because he's the one passing it on and making sure it still lives. But what I especially like about it is, so when he first confronts the Klingons here, the main leader, old guy Klingon, whatever his name is, he talks about how they already lost their honor when they get captured, so there was no point in ever doing anything else, and all this stuff. I think this idea that Worf, when the old guy says to Worf, like, what would you have done if your father were here, like, and I think one of the lines he says is, if my son found me here, if my son came, which implies he does have a son that he had from before he got captured, if my son came and found me, I would hope he would be Klingon enough to kill me. And Worf says, no, if I found my father here, like, I would care enough. I have more in my heart that I would accept who he is and try and make it work from there. Which shows that not only is that a really nice thing to hear from Worf, but it also shows that that's a bit of, I don't know, humanity mixed in there, because he has obviously been raised by humans and he's got.
It is as much as he tries so hard to be Klingon and live up to that. Ultimately, he has a very different perspective than most Klingons. Probably closer to a lot of the ones on this planet here than.
Which is why actually
a lot of other Klingons.
My favorite thing about this whole thing is that I don't think if another Klingon finds this place, they approach it in the same way that Worf does. Because Worf's whole approach to this, once he feels trapped here and he starts kind of doing his rituals in front of he's trading.
It's not yoga
thing, yeah. Once he starts doing that and the others start to copy him and they start to learn from and listen to his stories and stuff, I think he sympathizes that they have been robbed of all this knowledge, whereas I think maybe other Klingons, if they found this place, would just see them all as non-Klingons and be ashamed of them. Whereas Worf, because of his experience, his unique experience as a Klingon who's been raised outside of that system, actually maybe sees some of himself in them and wants to nurture them and give them a choice.
There's a point where he's teaching one of them how to hunt, and they get confronted afterwards. He's like, no. He saw that for the first time, and you're denying him that right of being a Klingon. He deserves to have that choice, because that's obviously that was such a big thing for him. He has that choice, thankfully, for him that he can, but he has to try harder. But why shouldn't they get to try as well?
Yeah, because obviously they speak as if they're free. The love interest says, we're free to do what we want, and Worf says, yeah, okay, ask your father if you're allowed to go and visit Klingon homeworld and see what he says.
She's just like, but it's dangerous there.
Yeah, that's the thing. They've been fed propaganda doesn't feel like the right word, but they've been fed stories of there's just war constantly on all these other planets. You don't want to go there.
Yeah, and they're probably overselling it a little bit, but when Worf's like, the war's over, it's not dangerous. I'm like, every time we've been there, it has been political backstabbings, and it's felt pretty dangerous. I'm not going to lie to you. Yeah,
the Klingon homeworld has been pretty rough going every time I've seen it. To be fair, and I think I like as well that the episode gives Worf a moment where he actually doesn't act amazingly in a scene, and once he has time to think about it, he very quickly smarts up, and I like to think that's the influence of being around Picard and the other characters in the Enterprise that have give him that chance. But when he first notices, because he's actually getting kind of lovey-dovey, and honestly, usually when they introduce a love interest for a character on this show, it's 9 times out of 10 kind of rough. Because Worf, he's had one proper love interest, right? And that was the mother of his son, really. Yeah. I don't really remember any other prominent love interest. This was actually a bit more interesting in that there's always someone that he's actually kind of into. It
doesn't
more
happen
fascinating.
Often, and I think this works more than just any other random Klingon, because this is one that he can relate to a lot more. While Worf may be biologically all Klingon, culturally he's kind of half and half, right? And it's the same with this woman here, where she's half Klingon, half Romulan, not human in Worf's case, but it's again that mixed cultural identity that she has. I think he can relate to,
and I do appreciate that he does react kind of negatively when he sees the years and he realizes for the first time, this is what she is,
and then it's that point of is that how other Klingons see him?
Yeah, and so him sort of dealing with that and then coming to this choice and still choosing to kiss her and stuff later on, and they have this moment, and she ultimately chooses to stay with her parents at the end of the episode. Which, don't get me wrong, I wasn't expecting her to become a main character and join the ship and be, his Keiko effectively, if you will. But at the same time, I was wondering where it would go with her. But we have this big thing where, as this is all progressing, the Romulan who's in charge, who has married a Klingon, and it's the love interest is his daughter. He is like, Worf, you need to stop this. You're being this bad influence. You're given all this unrest, and you're so on and so on. And ultimately, when Worf refuses to just stop being an influence and stop encouraging Klingon tradition, stop encouraging the hunts and all the other things, He's like, well, if you don't agree to do that, then I'm just going to have to put you to death. And not in a secretive way, like it's going to be a public execution in front of everyone, which part of me thought, dude, I don't know, if they're already kind of starting to follow him because they're starting to look up to him, this might make him a martyr.
Yeah, a little bit. And Worf's like, sure, go for it. If that's the deal, I'll do the whole Klingon honor shtick.
Yeah, and yeah, I saw the points that Worf immediately goes, well, fine, they'll see what it is to die as a Klingon with honor, which will only inspire them more. And given all we hear about Klingons and their honor and dying with said honor, that tracks with everything I've ever heard about them. So,
and it's kind of the whole reason he came here in the first place is, you know, his father not dying with honor.
Yeah. And I think for him it was a learning experience where, like, it's not so much that he doesn't feel that way anymore, but it's more that it's more complicated than that. Like, I think by the time we get to the end of this episode and he helps maintain the secret that these people are there, you know, he holds up the lie, and even though he comes back with a lot of the sort of the younger teenage Klingons and whatever who want to leave, he makes up a quick story as to who they are, like how they ended up on this planet that he was trapped on. And like, Picard clearly knows it's not the truth and just said, because the exact phrasing is very important, he just says, I understand. He doesn't say, oh, I see, oh, that's he doesn't say anything else.
He's like, I'll go along with it.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I really like that, because it was kind of like Worf having to deal with something that's a bit more complex that challenges his simple like Klingon black and white view of the world, and him having to sort of sparse that out. But you know, there's this big moment where the one he was training to hunt, who was initially kind of against Worf, but obviously over time kind of became his protege. At the end, he steps in front and says, "You'll have to kill me too." And the Romulan's like, "Okay, we'll have to do it." And then another Klingon steps in front, and then eventually the older Klingon, who was the one who's been against Worf the whole time, steps in front as well. And it's kind of like he's inspired all these people, and it kind of feels like, yeah, Worf doesn't have to prove to anyone anymore how Klingon he is. Now he's someone that other Klingons are looking up to, and I think it makes sense in the context of, like, as a TV show, this is the main one we're following. This is the main Klingon character we have. That ultimately, because we respect him as kind of our titular Klingon, it makes sense that eventually in the universe of the show itself, he's going to be looked at that way by other characters.
And in a lot of ways, this is the culmination of his of a large part of his character arc that we've had since the start of the show. In that he's gone from outsider to now the one passing on that knowledge. We've had hints of that with Alexander. Don't get me wrong. It's always been like, it's been going for a long time, but this kind of coming into a group of Klingons, and that he's not directly related to, and he's passing on that knowledge. Definitely feels like it is kind of the peak of that arc.
Yeah, and I think with Alexander, obviously it ties into it thematically, because again, it's this Klingon who's been raised, not always, but at least recently, by humans, by his like foster parents.
Yeah, and even when he's on the Enterprise, it's different to a lot of other Klingons, because it's it's a Federation vessel. There's everyone on there.
Yeah, and maybe this is him realizing that there's strength in his experience of having a different upbringing to every other Klingon that he's actually been able to tap into now. It's not this hindrance that maybe he thought it was. And yeah, like, I think, to credit the show, Worf, like, all of his focus kind of stories over the past like 5 seasons, I think, whenever we started doing these Worf specific episodes, I think they've all neatly kind of like thematically fit together quite well, and they do feel like the end of a big journey for the character. And that's not to say there's not going to be another one, but I know season 7 is not meant to be that good, so even if there is one, maybe it'll just feel like a
I feel like
thing.
It's a similar thing to what we said about Data. It was probably last season at this point where it felt like not that they won't do any more episodes, because they have done since we've said this, but we kind of reached a point where, okay, he is kind of reached the end of that journey for now, in terms of like, he's achieved those goals that kind of were established at the start of the show, and that was over 5 odd seasons, so that's kind of understandable.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting about Worf is I don't necessarily think, because I think Data had that defined goal from basically episode 1. He wants to be more human, right? So it was kind of stated. Worf, I think it was sort of more gradual over time that you realize what his issues are and what he's actually trying to accomplish. Yeah. And I think the way it's been kind of parsed out is like, I don't think Worf was ever the character I was the most looking forward to when I was starting the show, but he's definitely had some of the best like long running like IDs and themes.
It's been a very like it's a nuanced arc compared to, like, say, Data's is very kind of simple. Not that that's bad. It gives it clear, defined objectives to go to, but Worf's is a lot more subtle. It's been pretty spread out. Like, I think a lot of the stuff in the Klingon homeworld was like end of season 3, I want to say.
Yeah, it was the two-parter was last of season 3, first of season 4.
Yeah, so that's kind of in the middle, more or less, of where we're up to now from the start of the show, give or take. So it has definitely been a long time coming getting to this point.
Yeah, I think again comparing them, Data's simpler in that it's easy to define, but at the same time it's like almost like a harder, because it's like, what is humanity, right? So it's like a bigger philosophical question. Whereas Worf's story is more about talking about people and their cultures and what makes you part of one culture, what makes you feel valuable as part of that. So it's like less big, but it's actually more complicated from the perspective of like actually talking about society.
It is, and there's stuff even in this episode that they're just starting to hint on, that there are angles they can go on with it that they haven't got to yet. Like, for example, comparing him to the other woman here, there was a lot that it started to get out with the idea of like kids of mixed race couples, for example. Like Worf would be quote unquote white passing, whereas the woman she has the ears, she's very visibly different, as opposed to Worf, who's just culturally different. So you've got that whole angle that they just started to touch on here that I don't know, maybe we'll get more on that with Worf later down the line.
Yeah, I don't expect we'll return to this.
Not with this particular character, but just more that idea.
In fact, I wouldn't want them to, because I think the ending where he sort of keeps the lie intact, I think means that I don't want to see it again. Like, I think, no, leave it be the lie now that just stays.
Yes, yeah, I'm not saying we should revisit this and do it with this particular character, but more just, I think Worf probably has that realization himself over this episode, that in comparison, it's a lot easier for him to blend in with Klingons, and maybe we'll explore that. Obviously we've got another season or so of this, but we've got more Worf down the line to do some of that with. That's
true. Yeah, we got Worf in like half of Deep Space Nine to look forward to, so we're going to get a lot more of them. And maybe that's fundamentally maybe that's why they chose Worf. Partially maybe because the actor was willing to do more, or for whatever other reason. But maybe the reason why they were attracted to adding that character is because it turned out he had a lot more depth because of all these things you can tackle through his character. And when you look at Deep Space Nine and how it likes to tackle tough subjects, even already, we're only 8-9 episodes in, he does seem like a good fit as far as what that show tackles.
It does, and I think that'll bring in another. I know we're on the next gen conversation now, but I think it'll be fascinating on Deep Space Nine in that we know there's war stuff coming down the line in that show, and Worf being a warrior, that's kind of his archetype, right? And we haven't actually because there is no war right now in next gen, so he's kind of been a little bit out of place at points. So I think it'll be really interesting to see him in that sort of context as well.
It's been fascinating to see him go from like this two-dimensional, I am Klingon, I am warrior, to having these more just nuanced touches. And I wonder if like in Deep Space Nine, when these sort of bigger topics and subjects come up and there is like a time of war and things like that, I do wonder if he's actually more of a level-headed voice in the room compared to what he was in early Next Generation,
Oh, 100%, yeah. I think it would be a borderline character assassination if he wasn't.
Like, I can almost see like Kira on Deep Space Nine, but the one is we have to go for the heads. And Worf's like, no, let's be diplomatic.
Let's think this through a moment. Just don't wrong, he's still, compared to Picard, he rushes into things. He's very quick to temper.
There's a scale. There's absolutely a scale to this. It's not.
It's definitely less than what he was. And I am looking forward to that. I think we're comparing it a lot to Data right now, and I think. I end up looking forward to the Worf episodes more, maybe because there's less of them than Data, or at least it feels that way. It feels like there's a lot of Data episodes, and I think obviously there's been some very good Data ones, but I think the quality varies a lot more, whereas the Worf ones have been more consistent.
I think Data's probably had higher highs. Data's got like 2 or 3 episodes that are like, woof, they're
standouts.
They're like some of the best of the whole show. But yeah, Worf's are probably a bit more consistent, as it's probably fair to say. Shout out to James Cornwell, whose character is in one scene of this with no lines, so he got a payday for just sort of standing and waving, coming to the ship, but Worf's trying to escape.
Yeah, you gotta love it.
So that was that little thing. Yeah, no, I mean, I think the rating of this, which is it's not a super low rate, it's like 7 point some on IMDb, made me think it wasn't going to be anything particularly great. And I ended up thinking, oh, there's a lot of great stuff in here. This is a good Worf character episode.
Yeah, I realize. I think, like I say, it's not a low rating, but I think it's on the lower end of what tends to be given for some of the good episodes of this show.
Mm-hmm.
I think it deserves to be higher up than that.
This is more of an average score, I'd say, for the episodes in this show. And yeah. I would say this is above average. I would say this is one of the better episodes we've had of the season, probably.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the end of the season, we're doing our top 5. I think this will absolutely be in the conversation.
Yeah. But what's weird about it, though, is that it is definitely the most disconnected of a two-parter I've ever had, in that part 1 doesn't even factor into what I think of this episode, really. Like, it had some setup for why Worf's here, but they feel like it's just separate individual episodes otherwise.
Yeah, it's important background, and, you know, like I say, it's an extended pre-credit sequence, essentially.
I'll put it this way. It's basically like what you got in the last episode setting up this Worf plot was no more than what you'd get on a serialized show that has a B plot that sets up the next episode's A plot. It just so happens that this show is so self-contained, usually plot-wise, episode to episode, that this is called a two-parter, when in reality, it's not really.
And then this ended up being one of, if not the single most focused episode of the entire show. It has no B plot. It does not cut away apart from, you know, 1 point. Which, I mean, even some of the other episodes where, you know, like the best of the best episodes still tended to have a B plot of some sort. Even if it factored in, it still tended to cut around and follow other characters doing something that, you know, that did feed directly in. Whereas this is just, no, it's just all Worf.
Yeah. Which is great. It's great for Michael Dorn to have like a showpiece episode. To say, this is your episode. You're the star, and it's you and some guest stars. You know, like
does a great job.
Patrick Stewart's, you know, he shows up for a couple of cameos basically, and that's it.
Yeah, but hey, all those regulars are like, hey, yeah, we'll take our paychecks. Thank you very much.
I mean, in reality, they were probably shooting scenes from the next episode whilst. You know, it would surprise me if Worf's either very absent next episode or was very absent before these two episodes. Either way, they were probably shooting a lot of stuff simultaneously.
I think that's fine because you don't notice it so much, because we do sometimes go episodes where Worf is in one small scene and you don't think too much of it. I think a lot of the time it's just, that's a lot of makeup to put him through for not very much. We'll have him do a little bit, you know, and we'll do a couple of them at once usually, you know, but that's about it.
Yeah, okay. Well, next time on Next Generation, which will not be next Star Trek we get to, will be back to Deep Space Nine. I think we're doing 2 Deep Space Nines in a row.
That sounds familiar.
Because of the schedule, and it's just the way they worked out. But the next TNG episode we're doing is called Starship Mine. Just a tale. The description on IMDb is as follows. When the Enterprise is put into space dock for an emergency sweep of the ship, which is lethal to humans, Picard gets trapped on board with technicians who are not what they appear to be.
Yeah,
interesting. Okay.
Could go either way.
Yeah. Intriguing. So there you go. That is our thoughts on episode 17. So look forward to next time. I'm going to bring up a bit of news about the upcoming Picard season 3 because I want to mention it. So if you are avoiding all spoilers or whatever, you can start out now. I wouldn't say it's a big spoiler per se, but if you are media blackout, then leave now. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.
And good luck staying that way.
Yeah. But the trailer for Picard season 3, you'll never guess who's coming back.
Everyone.
I mean, well, the main cast, sure, everyone's coming back, but no, they're bringing back Moriarty.
Are they actually?
Yeah.
Okay, I kind of love that.
Assuming he doesn't pop up again in the show, given the last time we saw him, like he
speculated that felt like the end of that. Yeah,
he thinks he's free, but he's actually just in a big simulation of the universe or whatever. I'm curious how pissed he is.
Does that make him go full on villain? Like,
maybe.
Screw you, Picard.
You had me trapped in a digital cage for decades, you bastard.
Yeah. That's kind of fun.
That's funny. But I thought I'd bring that up. But yeah, so yeah, let us know what you thought of Birthright Part 2 in the comments. Like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications. All those things help, as does, of course, with the monies over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. And of course, you can do a one-time donation with the super thanks button on YouTube. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching Star Trek. And somewhere out there, Wesley Crusher is... I mean, he's not really hiding because he has no honor, because he never had honor in the first place. He's just to walk around with shame. He's kind of the most, like, all humans are not Klingons, but Wesley Crusher is the most not Klingon of all the humans.
No, maybe Barclay.
Barclay's cool though, Wesley. Come on.